Are you old enough to remember the My Favorite Martian TV series from the 60s or the movie remake from 1999? Well, we're not talking about either of those. We're going to talk about my favorite Martian, Martian Manhunter. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Graphic Content. I'm your host, Ted Kendrick. Today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the Martian Manhunter. This was a 12-issue maxi series written by Steve Orlando with art by Riley Rossmo. It just came to a close recently in February 2020. I loved this series. I've been following it since issue number 1, and I was kind of inspired to start reading it because of the success of Tom King's Mr. Miracle comic. I got really into the idea of DC releasing these 12-issue series about some of their B and C level characters. I enjoyed Mr. Miracle so much I really wanted to support this Martian Manhunter book as well, and I'm really glad that I did. It's definitely not a clear DC Rebirth continuity take on Martian Manhunter. This is very much his origin story, and by the end of the series, like you can see on this cover, he's back in his original costume from his debut in the 1950s. So jonzz, Martian Manhunter, has had a couple of series by DC over the years. John Ostrander, who's a popular writer of the Suicide Squad comic from the 1980s, he wrote a great Martian Manhunter series in the 90s. There was one in around 2006 or so that spun out of the Brave New World issue. It was published shortly after DC's 52 comic came to a close. There was another backup comic for Martian Manhunter that was in the Justice League of America comic around the new 52 era. It's written by Matt Kent, who's known for the Mind Management comic out of Image. DC's New Frontier by Darwin Cook did a great job about telling his origin story. So Martian Manhunter has had quite a few comics over the years, but this has been a really cool definitive sort of take on his origin story that we haven't had in a while. Basically, the scientist is doing experiments to draw Martian Manhunter from Mars to Earth, and he ends up leaving his whole family behind, has to start a new life there on Earth. Even Scott Snyder recently sort of dove into this origin story as recently as the Justice League series from DC Rebirth, but this does it a little bit differently. So what's been really cool about this comic is it jumps back and forth from John's time on Mars with his family and when he's been drawn to Middleton, Colorado, where he goes undercover as a detective. He takes on the identity jonzz. So it starts with John and his family. John is very much like a beat cop there on Mars. He's called a manhunter, but he has closed off his mind from his family. They're all kind of interconnected, and that's how they really become close, is by sharing this telepathic link. John doesn't have that link with his wife and his daughter because he wants to keep them from having to experience the horrors that he sees on his day-to-day job as a manhunter. So this kind of makes him a little more distant with his family than he would have liked, but when Hieronymir's curse plagues the planet Mars and basically like engulfs everybody's mind in flames, and in this comic this is what leads to the collapse of the Martian civilization. Since John has kept himself offline with this mind link, he isn't affected by the curse, and it's the sole reason why he survives. There's a really cool moment with his daughter coming to age as a Martian, and she starts off as sort of a just a ball of jello. When she reaches a certain age, she chooses what sort of form she wants to take. So John has a form that's a little more close to what humans sort of look like, which is kind of frowned upon in the Martian community. So everyone kind of has their opportunity to choose as a Martian what they're going to present themselves like. So it's really cool to see that sort of Martian culture get developed a little more than we've seen in the past. Riley Rossmo's art is super cartoonish in a way that really works for this Martian landscape. It looks very alien. It's just a lot of fun to read those segments. Riley Rossmo also recently worked on a story in the Wonder Woman number 750 special anniversary issue. So if you like the art here, definitely check out that issue to see the short story. Once Martian Manhunter is drawn to Mars, like I said, he takes on the identity of a recently deceased detective, jonzz. For years, he operates as this detective, and he's got himself a partner in the police force named Diana Mead. She has a sort of story, a B plot, where she's a lesbian and she's dealing with issues of coming out. And this directly mirrors jonzz' story as being a Martian and deciding who he's going to let in on the truth. Some people, like his partner Diana, stumble upon the truth themselves, and he has to sort of win her trust over. By the end of the series, he does. It kind of leaves it open for further adventures with jonzz and Diana. They embrace him as part of their police force and their local Martian superhero. So just to spoil it in for you there, it ends on a happy note, like, because we know John goes on to become a permanent superhero in the DC universe, so it's not much of a surprise. But on the way there, he's got to win over the trust of his partner, and there's another Martian entity that's in this small town, Middleton, Colorado, that's been abducting people and murdering people and leading this gang called the Vultures. And so it ends up being revealed as this monster called Charn. It's this Martian entity draped in this red cloak. Very creepy sort of thing, long fingernails. Charn has been going around kidnapping people to manipulate their DNA and create these Martian human hybrids, which is again something we've seen recently in Scott Snyder's Justice League run with Apex Luthor. But this is not tied into that, it's just really similar. Jonn and his partner Diana are going around just trying to deduce who the leader of the Vulture Gang is, which we find out is Charn. Charn is super interesting because they were a villain on Mars who was put into this extra dimensional jail, really similar in concept to the Phantom Zone from the Superman mythos. So after the collapse of the Martian civilization, there was no one around to let Charn out of the Phantom Zone. Charn eventually crawls its way out of this dimension and finds her way to Earth. And so there's this definite vendetta against Martians because of this cruel punishment that was issued to Charn, but they weren't around to let them out. So Jonn makes a point to apologize for this fact, but it's just not enough, and Charn is just out for blood. And so they've got to defeat this sort of larger than life Martian monster. Super interesting concept, and like I said, the art behind it is really creepy and really cool. But yeah, that's basically the comic. Kind of leaves itself open for more, and I would definitely be down to read more if Steve Orlando and Riley Rossmo were up for it. If you want to read the first couple issues, they are online on the DC Universe app. If you've got a subscription there, you can read most of the series, and no doubt the rest of it will be up there in the next couple months. I am sure there's going to be a collected graphic novel edition coming really soon as well. Really, like I said earlier, want to support these sort of B and C level characters that DC are giving their own series to. I think it's super cool that they're willing to try this stuff out and have a 12-issue Martian Manhunter series or Mr. Miracle or the upcoming Strange Adventures. So, and while I've got you, I'm gonna kind of do a little speed round like I've been doing and go into some other comics I've been reading lately. This week I want to talk about Brian Michael Bendis' Superman issues. He's been doing a lot of stuff. I know a lot of people online, they either love Brian Michael Bendis or hate him. I wasn't that super excited about him coming over to DC at first. I didn't read a lot of his Marvel work. I've read a little bit of Jessica Jones. I really need to dive into Spider-Man. I am so illiterate on my Spider-Man stuff. I'm not the most informed of Bendis, but I have been reading his DC work and I've been really enjoying it, especially the Superman run. I've been enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. So most recently, he released this issue called Superman Heroes, and this spins out of Superman the Truth storyline that's been going through his main Superman run. Obviously, he's revealed to the world that Clark Kent and Superman are one and the same. So in this Heroes issue, he goes to the Justice League to sort of talk to them and see if they have any further thoughts or comments or suggestions or words of wisdom. So it's really cool to kind of see some of the other characters in the DC universe react to this situation happening. There's some really cool scenes with Batman and Wonder Woman where they kind of debate like what's this going to do for the nature of secret identities, and Batman understands that it's the one thing that he can never actually top Superman on. Bruce Wayne has to keep his identity a secret. He's never going to reveal to the world that he and Batman are one and the same. So it also sort of sets up the Superman villains issue that's coming pretty soon, where likewise the villains react to his identity being shared. From the Superman series, we also see people in the Daily Planet react, like Jimmy Olsen, having already deduced and figured out that Superman and Clark are one of the same because he's the only two people in the world that call him Jim, so he knew for a while. But there's a really cool segment with the Daily Star debating on how to approach Superman being Clark Kent and having this exclusive first-person perspective on all the breaking news stories. So it's these other newspapers trying to figure out how they're going to compete in this new status quo. The other two series Bendis have been doing have been the main Superman title and Adventure Comics. So he's been writing all the Superman stuff. Basically, you get 2 chapters of Superman, every month, kind of continuing the storyline. They've both been different. I've been kind of thinking of the Superman series as Bendis's take on over-the-top interplanetary Superman stories. In number 20, the most recent issue, he is at this interplanetary meeting for what will become the United Planets, which if you're a Legion of Superheroes fan, you know the United Planets are basically the United Nations of the galaxy. That's been something in Legion comics for a while. We get to see the origins of that happen here in the Superman book. And so Superman Superman takes on the responsibility of representing Earth in the United Planets. And we also see Thanagar and Starfire's planet Tamaran and the Guardians of Oa, as well as characters like the Dominators that are all gathered together to try to unite the universe. And so Mongol of Warworld comes in and interrupts this meeting and starts beating up Superman and whatnot. So we're going to see that continue to play out into issue number 21. And now on Earth, people have kind of figured out that Superman, because of this whole United Planets thing, and he's set himself up to be their representative, they're sort of considering Superman that he might think of himself as the king of Earth, which we know is not Superman's intentions, but because he's asserted himself as this representative of Earth and United Planets, some people are starting to kind of think that he might think of himself that way. So there's some really interesting things going on here that I will continue to be invested in, and I'm here for it. The other series, Action Comics, is right now dealing with a team up between Lex Luthor's Legion of Doom that we've seen operating in the Justice League book, as well as Leviathan, who was the main character in the recent event Leviathan. And he's still operating. Leviathan is not defeated. There's even an upcoming sequel. The character of Leviathan is still very much here. So now he's teamed up with Luthor. They're fighting Superman and the whole Justice League. This seems to take place moments before the end of Snyder's Justice League run, which we know now is going to tie into the Death Metal sequel to Dark Knight's Metal that's coming out later this summer. I personally really liked Leviathan. The more I think about it, the more it's just people in cars talking about who Leviathan could be, and then at the very end of the series it turns out to be someone that they didn't really suspect anyway. I don't know, it's still like, Bendis does write really good dialogue. That's what he's known for. It's really realistic, and I really like the plot that we've seen come out of all this. I really like the characterizations that he gives to DC's heroes and villains, and so that's going to continue over the next couple of issues as well. So that's Brian Michael Bendis on Superman. Again, you know, you either love it or hate it, but I love it, so I'm still here right now. I'm gonna keep reading it through the end, I'm pretty sure, and I have no doubt that Bendis is only really getting started for some epic stuff. I also kind of think that with this whole Superman identity being revealed, that DC might have something in their sleeve in 2020 or 2021 where they rewrite continuity and it might not even matter. There's some weird stuff with Doomsday Clock where they brought back Ma and Pa Kent. We haven't really seen that reflected in these Superman titles yet either. So there's some weird continuity issues at play that I hope get resolved. They're just a little muddy, but nothing to really hamper my enjoyment of these issues. And I'm also reading Young Justice and the Legion of Superheroes comics that are also by Bendis, and they do sort of flow into each other a little bit as well. I think Bendis is doing a great job on the Superman titles. So that's today's episode, graphic content. I've got one more for you. I'm winding down on the show just because we're kind of reshuffling the way we're doing things here on the Watchtower Database. If you want to keep supporting us, we've got a Patreon page where we've got exclusive perks every month. You could do live stream with us, and there's various other levels there. Go check it out. We've got merchandise over on Teespring. You can see the link for that below. You can catch me doing at least one sort of video essay thing a month. Recently I did a video about the Justice League Dark, another one where I dig into characters that we've seen in the comic book tie-ins for the DC animated universe that would later appear on screen in a slightly different way. And so I'm very much going to be around the Watchtower Database, even though graphic content is winding down. Let me know in the comments what you'd like to see sort of in the future in terms of deep dive research topics for these video essays. But yeah, cool. Thanks for watching. I got one more for you here in a couple weeks. Bye.